Hi, everyone. Well, we might get started. I'd like to welcome you very warmly to the NABERS launch of the Retail Stores tool. And thank you so much for being here with us today. And of course, there's a technical glitch to start. There we go. We're here to launch NABERS Energy for Retail Stores. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to acknowledge that we're on Indigenous lands all across Australia, and really pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and really make the point that for NABERS this is a really important part of the start of any of our events that we do. So welcome from wherever you're joining us from today. We are going to have a really quick agenda today. We've got a welcome from our acting director, Magali, Wardle. We'll then go to a little bit of the development of the tool with Suruchi, Pathak. We've got a great panelist from some industry stakeholders. Then we'll have a little bit of information on how to get a NABERS rating, and then an opportunity to have some Q&A. We've got a Q&A box, so please feel free to drop questions in there throughout the session. And as I said, we'll come back to those towards the end of the event. So without further ado, Magali, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Hi, everybody. I'm Magali Wardle. I'm the Acting Director of NABERS. Thanks to all of you for joining us today to mark the launch of the NABERS Energy Rating for Retail Stores. In case some of you aren't so familiar with NABERS, it stands for the National Australian Built Environment Rating System. As the name suggests, we are a national programme administered by the New South Wales Government, and we've been helping buildings measure their environmental performance for over 25 years. As part of our last 5-year strategic plan, we had a goal to be able to rate all major building types. So that has allowed us to embark on a really ambitious sector expansion roadmap over the last few years, and have expanded our ratings to 6 new sectors. One of these sectors is retail stores, which is why we're here today. Over those past 25 years that we've been operating, thousands of buildings have participated in NABERS, and our data tells us that buildings that regularly measure their performance will reduce their energy consumption over time. This is not only good for the environment, but also leads to cost savings on your energy bills. By expanding to lots of new building types, we're opening the door for all of these buildings to benefit from the cost savings that come from regular management and measurement. We're going to hear more detail about how the NABERS rating works for the retail sector later today, but I'd really like to stress that we've developed this rating by working with stakeholders from industry, many of whom have actually joined us today. We've also collected thousands of data points to really understand what drives energy consumption in the retail sector. One thing we have learned when developing the rating for the retail stores is that this sector has a range of sustainability ambitions in some really important areas. Things like supply chain, product stewardship, packaging, recycling, as well as transport and logistics. So there's also a lot of variety in retail spaces in terms of the things that you make and sell. But one thing that you do have in common is that you all operate out of retail spaces that use energy, and that means that you all have electricity bills to pay as well. The NABERS rating provides a really simple way to measure how your business is operating in terms of energy and emissions. You can use it to compare against other businesses and track your own progress over time. Our customers also rely on NABERS ratings for things like ESG reporting and even access to sustainable finance. The rating that we're launching today covers tenancies within shopping centres, standalone retail stores, and street arcade stores. The amazing thing that we've seen with the various sectors we rate is how ideas and solutions are shared within each cohort, and there's plenty of homework to copy in the industry. So we have no doubt that this ambitious group will also pick up ideas, share with each other, and get some great results over time. I'd really like to welcome you all to the NABERS family, and we look forward to working with you to support you with your energy efficiency goals. I'm now going to pass over to Suruchi, who's going to talk in some more detail about how the NABERS rating for retail stores works. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Max. That was a great introduction to retail tool. Hi, everyone. My name is Suruchi, and I'm currently in the role acting as a head of market development. Prior to this, I have been leading the expansion program at NABERS for the last 4 years. And as a part of that, I have been involved in development of this particular store tool as well. So today we are quite grateful and I would say very delighted to launch this new tool for out in industry and for uptake. Before I sort of dive into the real actual tool and what it can do for you if you're a customer or if you're an assessor on the call, I'd like to give a very quick introduction on what exactly NABERS rating tool is. So what NABERS rating tool would do is it would give a building a 6-star rating, which starts from 1 to 6, as you can see, where 1 is making a star and 6 is being market leading. So it measures the environmental impact of your building, which then further helps you to manage it, improve it, and communicate it through a very simple language, because your building sort of consumes X amount of energy, and you're not communicating to your stakeholders that you use 80 megajoules of energy or something like that. But there is a star rating to it, whether you are an average. If you're a 3-star, you are an average. And if you are doing great and saving a lot of energy, you are actually market leading. And how this tool is developed is to make it apples to apples comparison. Sorry, Zoe, can I go back to my slide there yet? What I wanted to make it clear to some of the people on the call on the NABERS star rating is that we are not comparing a retail store, which is, let's say, a large departmental store with a retail store, which is a tiny sort of a bank. We are not doing that because that's just not the right comparison, or that's not the right scale to measure to. So what NABERS rating tool would do is sort of work in the background with this mathematical formula and spits you a correct sort of comparison. If your store was in the same sort of a climate, same sort of a size, and same sort of a type, then what sort of energy should your store be using? And that is put in a very clear 1 to 6-star rating scale. So moving on to my next slide. Thanks, Zoe. What NABERS tools are available at the moment are heaps of different types, from office onwards to today we're launching retail stores. But I would like to just focus on our shopping centers tool, because that's also a part of our bigger retail sector. So our shopping centers tool was developed quite a few years ago. In last 4 years, as Magali mentioned, that we have embarked into this huge development of 6 sectors, where the 6th sector we are launching today, whereas shopping centers tools has been there for ages. And when I say ages, I think many years ago, it was like one of the tools which formed the base of NABERS when Office was the start of the NABERS, NABERS ratings. So the shopping center tools would give you a rating for the base shopping center building. Whereas this tool, which we are launching today, is a retail store tool and would be able to give you rating for retail stores within that shopping center or outside the shopping centers or on a street or just by itself. So it's just sort of expanding the scope of rating in the retail arena to thousands and thousands of stores. Just adding on to there, as you would have read by now as well, this tool is only for energy. So what you can do is you can rate energy. There's no water tool. In general, NABERS would offer a lot of other different types of tools as well. There's energy tool, water tool, waste, and environmental tool, indoor environment tool as well. But today, our focus will be a retail store tool for energy. Zoe, can I have my next slide, please? Before I kind of move into real detail of the tool, I would go back and reflect on how actually we developed this tool. So the very first step we did was data collection, and we collected data from several stores, and that was about 4,000 stores, more than 4,000 stores, to cover all the diversity from different types. As you know, retail sector is so big. So we wanted to cover all types, big, small, whether it's department or it's clothing or it's footwear. So we collected all the different types of data. And with the help of that data, we go analyzing, we dig deep into this data to understand what impacts the energy consumption for the particular store, whether it's size, whether it's operating hours, and many different things, whether it's how it's conditioned. So we go and then sort of connect the dots or look into those parameters to develop the benchmark. So it's a very much mathematical work, and we've done that now, and we've got a great benchmark there, which is very robust and can give you an accurate sort of measurement based on the actual 12 months of billing data of your particular store on where you sit on the 6-star rating scale. So after this benchmarking, we moved on to rules development. And this is a very important part of our development, whole process of development of the tool, because these standards will guide you on which sort of type of sector you sit in or your store sit in, and how would you measure area, or how would you measure these particular inputs to calculate your rating. So it's a standard document which will make sure that the rating remains robust at all times. We also ran pilot ratings in different diverse types of stores, from bigger to smaller, from warmer climate to cold climate, just to make sure that our benchmark remains as accurate as possible. So the pilot ratings were a great way to go back and look into a benchmark and correct it and make it as robust as possible. Today, we've got 60 assessors trained who can help you conduct those ratings. So if you are a retail store owner, or if you are a tenant and you would like to understand the environmental impact, you can find an assessor. And I think Zoe will touch on how to find an assessor for retail stores and to go about your rating. But we've got 60 assessors who are trained now. The training session was delivered by us as a part of a development. Parallel to that, we've developed a great online platform, which is called NABERS Perform, which makes everything easier in terms of input of data into the system, and then calculation of ratings and sharing it with your different sort of stakeholders as well. So that platform is also ready and rolled out for retail stores. So then here we come today to a very special event, launching this tool out for your uptake. Now, as you've seen, all that didn't happen in just a few months. It took us more than an year. We started in September 2022, and we didn't do it in silo. So we started with an advisory group. We set up advisory group with different organizations. So we had 29 organizations from different retail areas for retail peak bodies, and we conducted a number of panel meetings to go and discuss while we were developing this tool. And these are the organizations who helped us with data. So many thanks to some of you who are in room here and who made us helped us develop this tool. We also then, obviously, it's a very, very technical work. While we are developing this benchmark, we worked with a very expert consultant, Celtic. Thanks to them as well for helping us. And the whole NABERS team who has been part of this tool in some form or another to bring this big piece into picture and out in the market today. So thanks to everyone who has been involved in some way or the other in this retail store tool development. So what can be rated? Can all retail stores be rated? We'll talk about that in our next slide. But what I can say is many retail stores can be rated in different settings. So if you are a retail store within a shopping center, yes, you can be rated. If you are a store outside a shopping center, but you've got attached stores to yourself, your store has got common walls to different stores, you can be rated. So as we call them, street shopping arcade stores. Or if you are a standalone with no attachment to other stores, you can be rated. So different settings, yes, you can be rated. Okay, so there's a huge list out there, and this tool is amazing because it's covering a number of different categories. But I would compete to that. There's a number of retail stores, a few number of retail category types, which we do not cover as well. I'll come to that later, but I'll first sort of talk through this list that we're covering. So this tool is divided into two categories, one which is services, and then the other one which is goods. Because again, back to my benchmarking sort of guidance there, that we wouldn't want to compare apples to oranges. So to keep it clear and to keep it very robust, we have divided into different categories. So we are making the correct comparisons. And those categories are bank branches because they have their different consumption as compared to hair and beauty services. Then we've got telecom and internet services, which will cover all sorts of internet service providers and telecommunications. And a different provider section, which would cover travel agents, postage services, and any other financial retail outlets within or outside the shopping centers. So all those categories are covered under services. And then we come to different types of goods where it'll be electrical and electronics, because if you've got a number of screens, you wouldn't want to be compare yourself with a clothing store because you are using energy for running those screens. So a benchmark would allow for that. So there's a second category, which is medium and large departmental stores, which are then sort of defined by how big a store is. So if you are greater, your GLAR or gross lettable area is greater than 4,000 square meter, you will be classified as a medium to large departmental store. So something similar to Myers, which comes to my mind. So, and then we come to other two categories, some specific type of goods like furnitures, bookstores, or party supplies. And a separate sort of a big category is the last one, which is smaller departmental stores, which has got a mix of types of goods they sell. And this category includes pharmacy, lighting, jewelry, sportswear, and a number of other categories as well. If your product is not listed in this list there, it might be covered in that last category. Now, coming to the point that there are some of the categories which we don't cover. The key ones are any store which has got some sort of a cooking, so for example, a cafe or a restaurant, that's not covered. And if there is a supermarket, that's also not a retail store. So supermarket is its own category and it has a different sort of operation. So that's not covered by this retail store tool. And hardware stores. Unfortunately, we couldn't include hardware stores in a tool because we couldn't get any data on it. So those are the two main key ones which are not covered by our retail store type. Moving on to what do we require for calculating a rating. So there are different inputs that will be required to calculate a rating. The very first one is rated area, and you would require some sort of a survey plans and line diagrams as well. If you're a shop owner, you don't have to worry. There's an assessor who would request this documentation from you, and having that area or what is included in that area and what's excluded in that area is what we have provided in training to that assessor. Then there's this retail category, which I just went through that list in my previous slide. You would determine what sort of retail category you fall in. And then the servicing arrangement. So the servicing arrangement is whether you are centrally air conditioned or whether you are partially serviced or you are non-centrally serviced. With the location type, whether you are a standalone store or not standalone. So why that's different is if you're a standalone store, you are very much exposed to your environment. You end up using a little bit extra energy than a typical store, which will be sort of connected or inside a shopping center. So those two types are given different sort of a differentiation. The next input would be weekly trading hours, and very simple input to know, which you would be able to provide us through any communication you make to your customers on what are your weekly trading hours. And climate is a easy one and is an auto input through your postcode. So there's a bit of a documentation list in there. As I mentioned, for area, you would have some lease documents and surveys or site plans, and then there's some specific sort of documents which your assessor can request to input, to sort of, create those inputs to calculate the ratings. Now we'll talk a little bit about coverage. I won't go too much into detail, but with coverage, when we talk about retail stores, it'll cover all sorts of lighting, power, HVAC, and any vertical or horizontal transport in that retail store. So if you're over a number of levels, you will be including your lift energy as well. And any equipment in the stores. If you've got lots of screens and lots of computers in your store, that's part of your coverage. And if you're standalone, there's also car parking and some signage and lighting. It all becomes a coverage. So that sort of covers your retail store coverage. And as you can see, there's some exclusions there as well. So when we talk about cafes and restaurants, that's also a category which is not covered by retail store, but there could be also a cafe within your retail store. So the consumption for that cafe or restaurant within that store can be excluded because that doesn't form the scope of this tool. So unfortunately, if you wouldn't have a sub-metering to exclude that particular cafe within your store, you would have to include it and your rating may be impacted. But in the minimum energy coverage, to be specific to the amount of coverage you would want to rate, you can easily exclude that if you can sub-meter. So that's a little bit about coverage. And I would like to now conclude my session by thanking Commonwealth, who's helped us launch this tool by their 1.5 million investment in this sector, which is now out in the market to use. And also to all of you who have helped us collect this data. There's this list on the screen with the participants. There's an amazing group of participants who just came up with, hundreds and hundreds of data points for us. And hence we had this great benchmark. So thanks to everyone for being part of our journey of this development. Over to you, Zoe.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Suruchi. And yes, so many people take part in the development of the tools. We're very lucky that we actually have some of the members of the advisory panel for our next session. I am going to stop sharing so that we can see their faces. Thank you very much to Bonnie, Brodi and Jeff, who you'll see on screen now, who were all involved in that advisory panel that Suruchi was just talking us through. And so we've got some really nice insights from what's happening out there in the retail section, and having been with us through this journey, a little bit about what you've learned. So I've got a question first for Bonnie, who's from the National Retail Association. And the NRA plays a significant role in the industry, and you've been really involved in the development over the time of the tool itself. What do you see as a key benefit for retail store managers and owners of getting involved with a scheme like NABERS?
Thank you for having me today. And I think something really wonderful with the NABERS tool especially is that particularly for the small and medium businesses and retailers, there is a lot of uncertainty, particularly around emissions, energy use, gas, electricity, even water consumption. So I think something that's really important is if you're not aware of how you're tracking in terms of how you can measure, your outputs as well, the cost as well. And I think one of the benefits that we saw when we joined this program is that there's businesses often weigh up cost benefits when they look at these kinds of programs. And it's a very simple tool that helps businesses, retailers understand, where they can save on things like energy. So we're hearing a lot about the cost of power, the cost of living, obviously. We know that businesses are trying to keep within their margins. So being able to measure their energy outputs where they can, find and successfully implement a reduction in power prices is always beneficial. Looking at things like where there's potential wastage as well, where there's overconsumption, helping them to assess it. So much like a lot of businesses are working towards sustainability, this obviously covers that in a very broad remit, but also enables those businesses to look at that themselves, to implement plans in the future, to look at different energy plans perhaps, and we've seen that as well, or to discuss that with their landlord even, or the site that they're actually on. So we think this tool is really invaluable. If you're coming into it with not a lot of knowledge, it's fairly easy to navigate as well. So we're really supportive of the program.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks for your support. And we do really appreciate it. Brodi, Country Road was involved in the pilot ratings as well. So you've been one of our front runners who's actually been through the NABERS rating process. First cab off the rank, essentially. Can you tell us a little bit about how that experience was? How was finding data? Were there any sort of challenges? And who did you have to engage in your business to go through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. We were the lucky guinea pigs who got to get involved with the pilot, which was a great experience. I think like a lot of real estate or sustainability initiatives, participation in the pilot was a bit of a cross-functional effort and often comes back down to data and relationships. I think Country Road Group had a lucky leg up in this space. It's not the first time we've been involved in kind of a sustainable building rating space. We've done a lot of work previously with the Green Building Council Australia on Green Star, which meant that we had some internal processes and levels of understanding and kind of the value of this kind of exercise that we were able to leverage. For instance, having a few centralized data systems around kind of leasing information and utility billing that are managed by different teams that we knew that we could tap into. We also have a dedicated sustainability role, very luckily, within our real estate team. So us in our group sustainability team were able to, collaborate really closely with them to identify what teams would have the information we need. And that kind of worked across leasing for a lot of that kind of store design perspective, facilities management for our utilities, and then people and our retail ops teams looking for information around headcount, operating hours, when do operating hours change based on public holiday hours, particularly for stores that are in shopping centres. For both of our stores that were involved in the pilot, we also ended up needing to engage directly with the shopping centre landlords to get access to meter data and also access to site, such as the base building areas of the shopping centres where our meters are located. So having these really strong relationships with our landlords through previous projects that we've worked on has been super helpful in getting information back quickly and being able to kind of continue through with the pilot. For this exercise, we centralize a lot of our data collection through SharePoint, nothing sophisticated, but it allowed us to take a task management approach and kind of tick items off as they were completed once they were loaded and reviewed and sent through as part of the submission. So I guess my suggestion to anyone starting out on this journey would be, identify who those key relationships are within your business and externally, and what are those key sources of data across the business, and set up a really simple, even just a simple checklist process that helps you collect and store that information as you walk through. But yeah, it wasn't as intensive as you may think. A lot of the information already exists. It's just a matter of knowing where to look.
That's it, right? It's knowing who to talk to, knowing where to go to look for this stuff. And thank you so much for that insight on the process. And yeah, I think it is always a matter of, first you have to find out who to talk to, but it can be a real conduit for building those relationships, like you say, within the business and with your landlord and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting process once you're in it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Jeff, there are so many different paths around sustainability that a business can take, and I know ANZ has got some ambitious goals, and you've been taking sustainability priorities really seriously. What are some of the exciting ideas and projects that you're seeing both in the retail space but also beyond? Like what can this sector do?
Dangerous giving me such a broad question, because you know how much I love to talk about sustainability, but I'll try to keep this as short as possible. So yeah, look, I'm fairly lucky. Just probably in reference to what Bonnie was talking about too, around understanding your energy use. It's actually also allowed us to negotiate better tariff rates, and we do a tariff review of all of our retail. So that's actually helped us do that. And totally agree with Brodi around having some really good people, and the information, the data available made this quite easy, because we were also part of that pilot project. The mechanical drawings and access to site with 2 keys from some of our landlords was the challenge. But anyway, I'm very lucky to be at ANZ. We've got 80, 90 plus people working in the sustainability space on all different areas. I sit within group property, and I've got a great team that sort of sits under me. We generally focus on those key environmental targets that we have for our own operations. So as many people do, Scope 1, 2 emissions reduction, increase in renewables, water waste paper reduction, and I think we're in the process of looking at new targets around Scope 3 emissions to align with the new disclosures. So a lot of exciting things happening in that space. We have quite a broad sort of portfolio. So we've got data centers, you know, we're across the 29 markets globally. So different countries require different things when it comes to office spaces or data centers or retail or even ATMs. So one thing we've always struggled with the retail space is sort of comparing apples for apples. So I think the NABERS tool is really going to help us do that. It does sort of make only 16% of our total emissions. So probably not enough love has gone into our retail space when it comes to data analysis and improving energy efficiency. Where we've generally focused, and it sort of ranges across all of our portfolio, is sort of three key areas that I always look at, is around the leasing aspect in the first instance. So improving our leasing, green leasing opportunities. Commercial's been doing it for many years, but now we're sort of entering that retail space, and what we're finding, you know, shopping centres and some of the big players are already doing it in this space. We're requiring to do a lot more as tenants, but also with them, we're requiring our landlords to do a lot more as well. The second one was around waste and fit out waste. I'm sure everyone online would agree. Upgrading a fit out is always, I get so icky about it because there's so much waste to do with it. So we've worked with our teams around the design guidelines and the sustainable fit out guidelines. So we've got a bit more of a modular kit of parts. We were lucky enough to use Breathe Architecture to design that. And what we're seeing is we're able to sort of pack down a branch and then use the majority of those same pieces for a new branch. So we're still going through to update all of our branches with that new design. But now we actually are seeing a reduced embodied carbon as well as waste sort of as we progress through that program. And then, as we all do, the ongoing management of the properties. So that's making sure that all your great design fit out items are working, but then actually how the staff are using that building or that space. So that's the key for us, is going, well, you can have a 6-star, as I think Zoe, you and I have always said, if you can have a 6-star building but a 2-star tenant. So making sure our staff aren't being the 2-star tenants. So they're sort of the general areas that we sort of focus on. And then within the retail space, as I said, the Breathe modular design is really exciting. The green leasing progress that we've made, but also we've developed a solar PPA program. So we lease all of our retail branches. It's very hard to get solar on when you are leasing and have short-term leases. So we developed a program with a third party to get solar on our standalone buildings, obviously, for nothing. Landlord gets to have a free solar, and then we buy power at a discounted rate and have that for the life of the lease. So yeah, some really cool stuff going on in the retail space, actually. So it's pretty exciting, especially with the new disclosures and the requirements around scope 3 emissions, supplier data, climate risk. It's an exciting time to be in sustainability.
It is, right? No, that's great. Thank you so much. And I think that, you know, that looking forward to things like that disclosure and extra reporting that we do see coming down the horizon. Obviously, I'm here to plug NABERS, but NABERS is a great way to get ahead of that with a really robust kind of structure. So it's not a, you know, it's a claim that's been third party verified. So, you know, it is my job to plug NABERS, but thank you so much. Any final words from our panelists on, you know, the experience or what you see in the industry?
I think similar to what's been touched on already, I guess, in this session, is I'm very excited to see how this evolves for those of us who are tenants within shopping centres, aligning with the shopping centre NABERS retail tool, and how, you know, those big institutional landlords and other companies like us can start to collaborate together and kind of have that full visibility of the energy profile, both from that shopping centre based building perspective and then as individual tenants, kind of to what Jeff was saying, kind of really helping us collaboratively work together towards answering some of those questions for disclosures, but really identifying opportunities to kind of improve our energy efficiency and our environmental impact.
Yeah, for sure. And look, there's we're working on it at NABERS. That is a great opportunity, from the green leasing through to just the relationship with the landlord for those retailers who are in shopping centres. And we are currently working on co-assess for the shopping centre and retail stores. So we're in the development progress of that. That'll be launching some point next year. And that is really the tool for the base building, for the shopping centre and the retailers to basically go hand in hand to get the retail rating done at the same time as the shopping centre rating. And like you say, a lot of those institutional owners they're already doing their ratings, as we saw from Suruchi's work. So if that is something that you've got retail in a shopping centre and you think, oh, I'd like to know more about that process, please reach out to me after the session. But yeah, that's going to be a really exciting opportunity, right? And it can only strengthen that relationship between the retail and shopping centre spaces, and we can go faster together.
I might just add as well, from my perspective, the tool really helped. We did the pilot. I'll be honest, that the pilot result didn't come out as high as the expectations were, which has just allowed us to go back and actually hold the facilities management accountable, and then look to improve. And it really was just a little bit of tweaking from our HVAC settings, I think, that will make the improvement. But without having that and that level of information, it's just allowed me and my team to do a little bit more and hold the other parts of group property accountable. So it'll be nice to be able to have a full portfolio of and compare, all of our branches and all of our commercial buildings and the likes, and then focus on those sort of lower performing ones as well.
Yeah, great.
I think probably something to mention is, if you're on that path or you're considering it, do some research. You don't have to commit there and, then on the spot, but doing research on NABERS, understanding where it can help you, talking to your team about it more broadly, and even looking, at the assessor option as well. If there's, a cost benefit that comes from this, then it's only beneficial to you and your team if it's helping them understand, more around your sustainability, your footprint as well. I think that's really important. But again, you don't have to commit right now. It's something you can look at implementing, but taking small steps is something that we always encourage retailers to do. And where there is something that's, a long-term, could be a long-term goal of yours to work on, but having a look at it today, just doing a bit of research, finding out, and again, like the NABERS team have added, if you have any questions, just to reach out to them.
Amazing, thanks, Bonnie. And actually, that is a great thing to mention as well, around the assessor training. We have a great community, as Suruchi showed, of accredited assessors. If you have a really large portfolio of retail, like in the commercial office sector, you may want to have on-staff accredited assessors. So that could be something that you could put your own, someone from your team or a couple of people from your own team through, which again is just building that skill up around the development of the tool. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, again, talk to us. We're always keen to chat. Great, thank you so much for all the amazing insights. So really, really appreciate you all being here today, but also being here over the last couple of years as we've developed this tool. We really can't do the development of tools without the industry being really involved and telling us all the good and bad things about your industry, your buildings, what we know, pointing out things that we haven't got quite right. So we're always confident and happy that by the time we're getting to the day like today, where we're actually launching it into market, that we have had real on the ground input from so many different people across the sector. So thank you again to Brodi, Jeff and Bonnie for being here today and for participating. And yeah, we will watch this space. Great. So next on the agenda is me. So we will get on to the really important question of, how do you actually get a NABERS rating? What happens? So if there's one phrase that you take out of this entire day, if there's one thing that you remember, it should be find an accredited assessor. Just pop that in your memory bank and it'll stay in there. Basically, this is the part of our web page where you can search our database of accredited assessors. And I have checked the SEO this week to see what came up, and we are the second result. So that's great. If you just put in find an accredited assessor, you'll land on this page on the NABERS website. This is where all of our assessors are listed, so that's across all the different rating types. And if you pop in, you can see that you've got the space to pop in the rating type, the building type, and the state that you're looking for. So that's your first step. Look for an assessor. They are really the person who's going to hold your hand throughout the rating process, and they're a real font of knowledge. As we said, we've got about 60 assessors already accredited, and I'm sure we'll have more joining as the tool develops. Once you've found a couple of assessors in there, you can reach out to a couple of them, talk them through what what you're interested in, what your sites look like, how many you've got, where they are. You might want to give them a bit of information, particularly as well if there's some additional work that you want done at the same time. They're sustainability professionals, so at the same time that they're coming to do a site visit for a rating, you might ask them to give you a bit of an action plan for some things that you can change or some other things. They will talk you through the services that they offer. They give you a quote, and then you get started. And then, as we heard from our panelists, it's a process, and from Suruchi as well, it's a process of collecting that data. And there are some tips and tricks on where to find leasing documents, site plans, etc. Your assessor will talk you through this, but you can get, you can get started. As Brodi was saying, working out who within your business you need to talk to find out where the bills are and those sort of things. You'll need 12 months of energy bills and the operating hours, etc. But the assessor will talk you through that process. They collect the data from you, and then they're plugging that into the NABERS platform. That's then getting submitted to NABERS. So this is the how does it actually happen behind the scenes. Gets submitted to NABERS, where it's audited, checked. We go back and forward with the assessor a couple of times, making sure everything's in place. And then your performance is certified by NABERS. So what you receive then is a certificate, which, might be 6-star. That would be amazing for everyone to start off in 6-star. And you're getting that certificate with the performance. The certificate itself is valid for 12 months, meaning that that's something that you can publish and have out there as a valid NABERS performance rating. There's a second part where you're getting this more detailed energy rating report, which has a bunch of annualized figures to the discussion we had a bit earlier around annual reporting and other requirements. Those figures are something that you might want to be inputting, and you might be needing to input into reporting, or you might want to start talking about not just the star rating, but some of your emissions figures and emissions reduction over time. So those are the two exciting parts that you're, or the two components. You'll also notice on the certificate itself, we've got a circle with a percentage calculator, and that is the renewable energy indicator. And this is now a standard part of all NABERS energy ratings. We introduced this just over a year ago. It's just part of the NABERS rating, and it is a recognition that really renewable energy is something that more and more businesses are really keen to get good oversight in. And so this is something that we've developed into the tool. We used to just recognise on-bill green power, and now we're looking at a range of different renewables. So it's breaking down all of your energy sources and giving you a result, a percentage of all of those energy, whether that's diesel, gas, your on-bill, and we're also looking at any other sources of renewable energy that you might be getting. And we know across, the diverse range of different building types within retail and lots of other sectors. Sometimes on-site is possible, sometimes it isn't. So there's the renewable energy portion of a NABERS rating is recognising that your purchases, so anything that you're purchasing on bill or you're purchasing by your landlord, if you've got an embedded network in a shopping centre, anything that's on site, as long as it's being used by your part of the business. And it's also including the grid renewables. And so these tools are really useful. It's a great new addition to the NABERS rating, and it will help you sort of track that movement towards fully being renewable, and it's also a pathway towards electrification. So it's a really exciting thing as part of the rating, and helps you track that progress over time. So okay, great, we've got this great certificate with different portions. What do we actually use it for? Everything is my answer. First cab off the rank, we've heard a lot about comparison, meaningful comparison, both between you and others like you. So a little bit of healthy competition, how your stores compare to others, but it can also be a really powerful tool to compare your portfolio, as Jeff mentioned as well, looking around which sites and which stores are better performing, where you might need to go and pay attention within your own portfolio. Long-term phrase that you'll hear bandied around the sector is what gets measured gets managed. So it is something that's really, really useful as that certified check-in on how the performance is going. So you're able to use a NABERS rating to set targets, to set a baseline to begin with if you don't really know what the performance is. And that measurement tool to be able to improve over time is just so important. I've already mentioned a little bit around reporting. You may not have a super robust reporting requirement at the moment. NABERS can be a nice starting point for that. So it's where to get started with reporting. Nice third-party verified check-in of your performance. And as we've discussed, we've got potential reporting requirements and disclosure requirements coming down the barrel for this sector. And so this again is a way to get ahead of that, to get started on that work. Or if you're doing really robust reporting in other parts of your business and looking at your supply chain and other material parts of if you're a product manufacturer, a seller, this is a way to bring what's happening in your stores into that same reporting system. So really kind of cover more of the bases in your sustainability story. And recognition, it's always good to get a nice reward, a nice certificate with a good result on it. Something that you can publish, because the NABERS rating is third-party verified. You can pop it on your website. You can talk about it in public spaces. And look, Jeff mentioned before that they did receive a NABERS rating that wasn't as high as they might have hoped. And I'd like to reassure you that that is nothing to be ashamed of, nothing wrong with that. It goes back to that measurement and management. If you don't know the performance, you can't do anything about it. So while we do say those recognition things are super important, if it's not a great result, we do still hope that that's part of your storytelling. And it can also be part of our storytelling, because another thing that a kind of benefit of being part of the NABERS family is that we're really in that space of trying to bring these sectors together through our spaces, through our platform. And we really want to tell customer stories. We want to tell other people like you how you've achieved some wins, where you're going, what your targets are, what your ambitions are. We've got a rating map on our website. We publish case studies. We put out storytelling. We want to do more and more of this. And so it is an invitation to be part of the story. If you get a lower rating, we hope that you make some improvements over time, and next time you rate, you get an even better story, and that's something that we can share and tell. If you're not that excited about your results, you're also welcome to make your rating private. But as I said, getting a lower rating is just part of the storytelling of the journey. So yeah, talk to us if you'd like to chat more about the pros and cons of having a public rating. But one of the other things that we do within NABERS is really talk about that journey of the sector over time. And so, we've been in office for a really long time, over 25 years, and we've seen a really amazing trajectory of improvements in energy performance over those years as buildings get re-rated and re-rated. And the shopping centre tool, which as we know has been around for a little bit less time, we've seen a similar trajectory on that. And I'm really hoping that we're going to see retail stores sitting here along with a similarly exciting story. Next important question is always, okay, so how much does it cost? The NABERS rating has two parts. So there's the NABERS fee and the assessor fee. The NABERS fee is the part that the NABERS program sets, and then the assessor fee is for the time and work that the assessor uses working through you. So when you appoint an assessor, they'll obviously have given you a quote for their time, and that will, it may depend on how complex the site is, how big your site is, a few other queries and conditions that you talk through with your assessor if there's additional services that you'd like them to do. The good news is that we discount the NABERS fee portion by 50% for the first 12 months. So there's some really nice savings for all of those early adopters. And next thing, we do have some calculation tools. So we roll out and estimate your rating, which is where if you're just interested in having a little investigation on NABERS and how it works, you can plug in some high-level numbers into that and just play around with what it looks like. We've also got reverse calculators that are useful for working out how much you'd need to save to get to a target, and some prediction tools which are around the greenhouse gas emissions factors and things like that. So we do have tools that are all free to use. Please feel free to get in there and play around. And of course, feel free to get in touch with us and talk about it. You can go to the assessors, talk to them, but we're also very welcome and open to talk to customers and potential customers from the NABERS team as well. And I'm the sector lead for the retail stores and the shopping centre tool. So reach out to me if you've got questions. So to recap, calculators, find an assessor, start collecting data. It's all nice and easy to do. But yeah, take away the find an accredited assessor and you'll be on the pathway. So we are ready for some Q&A. And I will see if I've got any questions and answers in the box now that I'm going to stop sharing. We have no questions, which is great. We've obviously covered absolutely everything. As I said, do feel free to reach out to us if you want to know more about the tool. If there's any questions that you've got, or if there's anything that we can help, in your journey to get NABERS rated. I want to thank everyone who's joined us on the panel today, and I really appreciate the time and energy, both in the development of the tool and for sharing what you know today. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And yeah, can't wait to see where this sector goes. Thanks so much. See you next time.